Hello all, my name is Dr. Sarah Sims Anderson, and this is an e-poster on my dissertation, Implicit Beliefs, Mental Skills Use, Sport Enjoyment Sources, Resilience, and Competitive Motivational Styles of College and High School Athletes. An overview, various effort, persistence, and commitment levels are seen across the athlete spectrum, identifying why some athletes give more effort than others, persist in the face of setbacks more than others, or stay committed to their sport and skills growth more than others is an important goal of sports psychologists like myself. This study attempted to address this question and add to the growing literature of understanding achievement-related behaviors through a cross-sectional design. The purpose of this was to examine a novel set of variables across Division II and high school competitive levels. Literature is lacking in the field, so in order to advance research and literature within the achievement motivation framework, these novel combinations of psychosocial constructs needed to be included. Results of this may help assist consultants, coaches, and athletes by identifying what sports psychology constructs really relate to one another so that material can be taught or delivered in the most impactful ways. The theoretical framework comes from an achievement motivation research standpoint or framework. Motivation in achievement situations continues to be a construct that's not completely or fully understood. So Nichols is a pioneer in achievement goal theory, and Dweck is a pioneer in the field of achievement goal behaviors and implicit beliefs, which are incremental and entity. And that was really the basis of this entire dissertation. Research questions. The hypothesis for research question 1 was that D2 athletes would display more incremental implicit beliefs about their sport ability than high school athletes. Research question 2, college athletes would display more mental skills use than high school athletes. Research question 3, the hypothesis was that at least 3 meaningful cluster groups would be identified. And the hypothesis for research question 4 was that athletes' score on resilience and enjoyment will be significantly higher for the groups that report higher mental skills use. The research design, I looked at Division II and high school athletes, total of 292 across 2 colleges and 3 high schools. There were 165 college students and 127 high school students, and overall we looked at 14 different sports. Okay. The way I conducted this study is I asked for permission to access campus and solicit participants, included an informed consent, parental informed consent for the minors, as well as an assent for them, and informed consent for those who are of age. I distributed the battery of instruments. It was paper and pencil for college and SurveyMonkey for high school athletes. So it's just a click to assent. And included demographic questionnaire and 5 instruments. Here is the instrumentation used for this study. The conceptions of the nature of the athletic ability questionnaire, the CNAC-2, the Ottawa Mental Skills Assessment Tool, the OMSAT-3, the sources of enjoyment and youth sport questionnaire, the SCYSQ, the Connor-Davidson Resilience Scale 10 item, CD-RISC 10, and the Competitive Motivational Styles Questionnaire, CMSQ. There was also a demographics questionnaire included. Data analysis. Once all instruments were coded in Excel, they were transferred to SPSS. We looked for normality, linearity, and missing data through univariate and multivariate models. Subscales were created, and then data was used in a correlation analysis using a bivariate correlation mix. The results of that bivariate correlation mix are listed below. Most correlations conform to expectations. There was quite a few that were worth pointing out, though. The first 3 were no surprises with these relationships. The bottom 2 were moderate correlations, but piqued my interest enough to continue to look into them. For example, looking at this and from a mental skills perspective, which one's going to make the biggest impact on many areas, this is something to consider. Fear control and refocusing. What is a skill that can be taught swiftly that could help an athlete regain focus and control their fears, such as deliberate breathing, routines, or more? As well as doubt-oriented and resilience. This was something else to investigate further with just a modest correlation. Does it mean that the more an athlete has doubt, the less resilient they are? Something to consider for the future. Data analysis continue. An ANOVA was completed to look at the first hypothesis, the first research question, excuse me, but no statistically significant effects were found. So hypothesis 1 was unsupported. College students did not display a higher incremental implicit belief than high school students. Next, a MANOVA, multi-analysis of variance, was conducted due to the multiple dependent variables. This supported hypothesis 2 partially because it found that college athletes displayed more mental skills use than high school athletes on just 2 of the subscales, and that was fear controlling and refocusing. Lastly, for the cluster analysis, that was done in a 2-step method, which is an exploratory tool. And what was found was that 4 clusters were able to be identified, which supported hypothesis 3. And hypothesis 3 was that at least 3 meaningful clusters would be identified. We identified 4 through a k-means cluster analysis. Here are the 4 group cluster solution models. You'll note that fear control bar is actually white, so it's difficult to see on this screen. But these are the 4 groups found through the cluster analysis: intervention target, capable, indifferent, and instinctive casual. As part of research question 4, the cluster profiles were used to examine differences across implicit beliefs, resilience, sport enjoyment sources, and competitive motivational styles. In a follow-up ANOVA, 12 out of 13 subscales were found to be different among the cluster groups. Entity was the only subscale that did not differ among the groups. Here are the variable profile differences continued amongst all those other variables. First, we have the capable cluster group. Just by looking at that previous bar graph, we knew that this group already had a statistically significant more mental skills use than other groups. But this also shows they had higher incremental implicit beliefs in 2 other groups, higher sources of more sources of enjoyment than the other groups, higher resilience scores, and had a development-focused competitive motivational style more than all the other groups. Not a surprise there. Intervention target group, they were very win-focused, and they have 3 strong mental skills that they use to help build their competence and persistence to win. But they also had a failure evader profile because they often view competition as stressful, so it was more difficult to refocus, which we saw in that chart. And the doubt-oriented profile, which has a fear of failure, which they also showed in the cluster analysis. The 2 other groups were instinctive casual and the indifferent group. And what was found with these 2 groups is not many statistically significant differences, except for a higher resilience score with the instinctive casual. But they also had higher scores on refocusing and controlling their fear, so that comes as no surprise. The indifferent group showed a stronger doubt-oriented and failure evader profile compared to other groups, which fits as they have fear they can't seem to control, they can't refocus, they're not really committed, and don't have a plan. The limitations of this study are as follows: small sample, convenient sampling was done, individual analysis, self-report measurements, a cross-sectional method, which can make it impossible to infer causality in relationships, and then a fallback of cluster analysis as it can make generalizability across populations more challenging or problematic. In the future, I would like to add more participants to this study to make a greater impact, so expand the sample size and look at other levels besides just Division II and high school. I would like to personally dedicate and thank my husband and my 3 children for being with me throughout this process, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation today. Thank you.